top stories. President Bush today changed his policy regarding Haitian refugees. The White House announced the president has given the Coast Guard the go-ahead to return to Haiti all Haitians picked up at sea. The Parliament of Thailand is preparing to choose a new prime minister. Suchinda Kraprayoon stepped down as prime minister earlier today. Thousands had been calling for his ouster. Arkansas Governor Bill Clinton told a black church audience in his home state his solution to urban problems. Among his ideas, giving business incentives to invest in jobs. A close finish in the 76th running of the Indy 500. Unser Jr. crosses the finish line just a few feet ahead of Scott Goodyear. It's the closest race in Indy history. And those are the hour's top stories.
From across the nation and around the world, here are this hour's top stories on your All News channel.
Good evening. I'm Lisa Engstrom. President Bush today changed his policy regarding Haitian refugees. The White House announced the president has authorized the Coast Guard to return directly to Haiti all Haitians picked up at sea as they flee their beleaguered country. Last week, the administration announced the Coast Guard would no longer pick up all Haitians at sea. Only those whose boats were in danger of sinking would be picked up. But today, the White House said the large number of Haitian migrants has led to a dangerous and unmanageable situation. Through broadcasts on the Voice of America, the administration is now urging Haitians not to attempt the dangerous sea journey to the U.S. Last week, 18 Haitians died when their boat capsized off the Cuban coast. The Parliament of Thailand is preparing to choose a new prime minister. There's still no word on the whereabouts of Suchinda Kraprayoon. He stepped down as prime minister earlier today. Thousands of demonstrators have been calling for his ouster, but Suchinda's political opponents are not satisfied with his resignation. Steve Dowling reports on the troubles in Thailand.
After days of rumors and confusion, Prime Minister Suchinda Kraprayoon resigned Sunday. His 15 months in power began with a military coup and came to an end just days after ordering a crackdown on pro-democracy demonstrators.
We don't want him out, but we want to kill him here, you know? Can't leave any place in this world because all Thais who are abroad will kill him.
At least 4 dozen people died in confrontations with soldiers in downtown Bangkok last week. Hundreds are reported missing in the wake of the riots. The violence ended only after intervention by Thailand's king, who called opposition leaders to the royal palace Wednesday night. The aftermath of the protests threw the Thai government into chaos, and going into the weekend, it remained unclear who controlled the country or the military. With Suchinda's resignation Sunday morning, it was believed a coalition of political parties would take over the Bangkok government, but no official transfer of power was announced. In his final action as prime minister, Suchinda issued a sweeping decree granting clemency to everyone involved in the demonstrations and the crackdown, including himself. The prime minister's departure is not enough for those calling for democracy or for those mourning the dead. Protesters at the Bangkok Democracy Monument say Suchinda's victims cannot rest until their killers are brought to justice. This is Steve Dowling reporting.
In other news overseas, a treaty is signed that is expected to lessen the nuclear threat. More violence in Israel and angry reaction in Italy to a mafia massacre. Those stories in our Weekend World Wrap. Here's Dave Andrews with details.
In Portugal, Secretary of State James Baker signed the Strategic Arms Reduction Treaty, saying it will cause a significant decrease in the chances of nuclear war. Also signing the treaty, ministers from Kazakhstan, Russia, Belarus, and Ukraine. More violence in the occupied Gaza Strip. The peace of a Tel Aviv suburb was shattered by the murder of a schoolgirl. The 15-year-old was stabbed to death by a young Palestinian. The killing brought outraged Israelis into the streets shouting for revenge. In Palermo, Sicily, the man responsible for sending hundreds of mafia members to jail was remembered. Giovanni Falcone was killed in a bombing Saturday. Sicilians, frustrated over the government's failure to crush the mafia, shouted shame at officials who arrived Sunday to pay tribute to Falcone. And that's a look at news overseas. I'm Dave Andrews reporting.
In the United States, a second day of deliberations in Miami today in the trial of Yahweh Ben Yahweh. The former NFL football player and 15 of his followers are accused of murdering 14 people, attempting to murder 2 others, and firebombing a neighborhood in Delray Beach, Florida. The religious sect teaches that founder Yahweh Ben Yahweh is the Son of God and that the black Hebrews are the only true Jews. Governor Bill Clinton told a black church audience in his home state today that his solution to urban problems is to, quote, take care of our own folks. Clinton said if he's elected president, his plan to revive urban America will include giving businesses incentives to invest in jobs, creating an apprenticeship program for young people, and allowing college students to pay off college loans through public service.
I wish the world could see in this election that it is possible for politics to work the way it ought to work. It is possible for people to be committed to one another and to work with one another. Not to work miracles, but to make progress. To make tomorrow better than today.
Clinton is expected to capture a big victory in Tuesday's Democratic primary in Arkansas. A Texas adoption agency is working with the former Soviet Union on a new alliance. The joint effort would bring Russian infants to the United States for adoption. Cynthia Tinsley reports.
Liliana Jehovah speaks little English, but her reaction to children she's seen while visiting the Gladney Center in Fort Worth are easily understood. Her mission here is to look at how the Gladney Center operates in hopes of finding an agency to expand international adoptions between the United States and the former Soviet Union. She says it's difficult to know how many children could be helped in her country, but there are many. For years, Russian children have had to spend their entire childhoods in orphanages like this one. But now, with the blessings of the new government, those children could find adoptive American parents. At the Gladney Center, more than 200 adoptions are made each year. Michael McMahon went to Moscow last month to find out how the Gladney Center could become involved.
This is a unique time in my life, or in the life of the United States and the Soviet Union, to be able to work together. And we've never been able to do this in the past. There are many children there that need homes. There are many families here that want to adopt.
McMahon says the Russian adoptions would differ from those of Romanian children. He says for the most part, the Russian children are well cared for and healthy, even though some orphanages are overcrowded and understaffed. Jehovah says actual adoptions between her agency and the Gladney Center could begin within a few months.
Teams of mine experts from the United States and other countries are still in Kuwait more than a year after the end of the Persian Gulf War. Daily, experts defuse mines planted by the Iraqis. While the experts comb the beaches to clear out the mines, it would only take a heavy wind or storm to bring in more mines. Like the old minefields in Europe, Kuwait will never be totally free of mines. The people of Krove, Germany are resting easier today after thousands of tons of rock, which was literally hanging over their heads, was blasted away. Vera Frankel reports townspeople feared the rock would crash into a river, flooding their community.
Nothing much ever really happened in Krove. In the quiet German village in the Moselle Valley, the streets are kept clean and tidy. Krove's only real claim to fame was fine wine. Until the rockbusters moved in. They came from Switzerland to blow up a massive hunk of stone that's been hanging over the heads of the locals. They worked quickly, draining the River Moselle of half its water. Then they set about planting the explosives. It became the biggest show for miles around. Camper vans and binoculars were a must, and they weren't disappointed. It was quite literally dynamite. It was the team's second task this week. They blew up a Swiss mountain last time. For the rockbusters, business is certainly booming. After exploding into the news, Krove fully intends to nestle back down into the peace and quiet of the valley.
Cracks began appearing in the rock several weeks ago, prompting the need to bring it down with explosives. 2 recent studies suggest American marriages may be stronger than some believe. A survey released this weekend by Self magazine shows nearly 9 out of 10 women surveyed said they would never consider having an extramarital affair, even if no one found out. A survey published in February by the magazine showed 7 out of 10 men said they would not have an affair either. On the comment line today, we're looking for your opinion on extramarital affairs.
Well, it all depends on the situation and what you mean extramarital affairs. Either it could be sexual or it could be compatible. Either one can be justifiable.
Marriage is not built like they were years ago. Too many married women are working, and when there's children involved, a woman belongs home. That's where she is, to be a homemaker and be there when her husband comes home.
If you have an opinion or want to hear what other callers have to say, call 1-900-370-NEWS. The call costs $1.95 a minute. We'll record your message and we may play it on this channel. Elvira Guillen says that's enough already, no more. That comment after the 29-year-old Minnesota woman gave birth to her 4th set of twins on Saturday. The latest duet is 6-pound Ivana and her 7-pound sister Yvette.
The first time I was very happy when I had the first one. Then the second I said, well, okay, 2 of them, that's fine. But then the third one I said, well, this is a miracle. Then this 4th one I said, well, I better decide and make my tubal ligation now.
Guillen and her husband say they conceived all their children without fertility drugs. Their first, a 13-year-old, was the only single. Guillen's doctor says the odds of 4 consecutive sets of twins without fertility drugs is 1 in 64 million. A published report today says Louisiana is edging out Texas for the dubious distinction of being the nation's biggest polluter. Louisiana officials have confirmed that their state is at the top of a list of worst polluters to be released this week by the EPA. Looking at the nation's weather, temperatures in the nation's midsection are bringing back memories of winter. The nation's cold spot today was International Falls, Minnesota, with 25 degrees this morning. It'll continue to be cold in the upper Midwest tonight. Northern Minnesota could see some snow this Memorial Day weekend. Tonight's forecast calls for clear skies over the Gulf of Mexico and West Coast. The Atlantic coast will see some rain. So will the upper Midwest and parts of Texas and New Mexico. It'll be cold tonight along the Great Lakes with temperatures in the 30s. Mild temperatures in the 40s and 50s for most of the nation. 60s for the Gulf Coast areas in Southern California. Here's the forecast for other areas of the nation. 99 nations have agreed to sign a treaty to save millions of plant and animal species. But some conservationists say the treaty, set to be signed at an Earth Summit in Brazil next month, is so weak it's almost meaningless. J.P. Verwey looks at 2 issues that will be the focus at the summit: global warming and biodiversity.
We're no longer facing a polluted lake here or some dirty air there. It's the whole Earth that's involved. There's nowhere to hide. If we don't do something about global warming, then animals, trees, people, whole societies face a potential catastrophe in the future.
Lifestyles over the last 100 years have taken a toll on Earth and the atmosphere. Some experts say the burning of coal and other fossil fuels cause global warming and the overall weakening of the environment. They point to the Industrial Revolution, the airplane, automobile, and a growing forest of smokestacks for choking the atmosphere with so-called greenhouse gases. Scientists say the buildup of carbon dioxide and other pollutants has changed weather patterns, leading to droughts and famine. Now scientists say global warming could make the next 100 years hotter than any time in human history, on average 3 to 8 degrees warmer. The experts say continuing pollution will be the fuel for widespread catastrophe.
This new study shows that regions in the developing world could be hard hit by heat waves and droughts in the future. It could affect their food supply, crops would fail, and as much as 350 million people, more than are already now projected, could go hungry.
Plants and animals face a double-barreled attack, not only global warming, but development, namely farming, logging, and ranching. Protecting plants and animals is the aim of the Biodiversity Treaty. The group Conservation International has labeled what it calls 15 rainforest hotspots. Those hotspots, they say, cover less than 1% of the Earth's land surface, but overflow with 1/3 of all plant and animal species. Conservationists say technology has already spoiled more than half of the world's land, especially hard-hit areas with the greatest diversity of species, including tropical rainforests. In the U.S., the economy is the environment's biggest opponent. It pits the life of plants and animals against the livelihood of developers. The White House has limited air pollution controls. Other plans are in the works to weaken wetlands protection. In these tight economic times, President Bush is opening up more and more of America's natural resources to development. Namely, 1,700 acres of forest in Oregon, the northern spotted owl calls home.
It's a mistaken notion to think that an owl recovery plan is going to bring stability to the Pacific Northwest.
I don't think that saving the owl is worth 30 to 35,000 jobs.
Living off the environment or letting the environment live. Observers say we must strike a balance. The outcome of the Earth Summit could very well determine the fate of all life on the planet. For the Sunday Spotlight, I'm J.P. Verway reporting.
The 76th running of the Indy 500 today, and John Anderson is here now with all the highlights. John.
Lisa, whenever the Indy 500 is held on May 24th, you better look out for the Unser family. 3 times auto racing's premier event has been held on this date, which has equaled 3 Unser victories. In '81, it was Bobby that won it. In '87, it was Al Sr., and today Al Jr. completed the trifecta. Pole sitter Roberto Guerrero had enough speed to blow this field away. The problem is bad luck stayed on his side, and he spun out on a warm-up lap. Former Indy champs Emerson Fittipaldi and Rick Mears also saw their days come to an early end. This crash knocked out both drivers and the onboard camera. It appeared that Michael Andretti was going to drive away and hide from the field as he led for most of the day, but then with 10 laps to go, his car shut down to keep him shut out at Indy. That paved the way for Al Unser Jr., who had just enough to nose out Scott Goodyear for the closest win in Indy history. Little Al's first Indy win, but the 8th for the Unser clan.
It sounds like there's some tears in your voice right now. Well, you just don't know what Indy means.
Great win. In the NBA playoffs, the Western Conference Finals are now down to a best of 3 after the Jazz evened their series with the Blazers this afternoon in Salt Lake City. Utah's defense was all over Portland today. Blue Edwards comes up with the steal. He and then John Stockton worked together to get Karl Malone for 2 of his game-high 33. A great game for Stockton. He gets another one of his 15 assists here to Malone, and the Jazz even the series at 2 games apiece by beating the Blazers 121-112. Game 5 is Tuesday night in Portland. In baseball, Terry Steinbach's first inning single was all the Oakland A's were going to need today in their game against the Red Sox in Boston. Harold Baines scored on the play. It was enough because Ron Darling threw a darling of a game. He shut down the Sox on 2 hits, 4-0. Oakland wins it over Boston. In golf, Bruce Litsky needed to work a little overtime, but he finally beat Corey Pavin in sudden death to win the Colonial Invitational in Fort Worth, Texas. The win is worth $234,000. Another putt that was worth a lot of money was this one by Pat Bradley at the LPGA Skins game. This one dropped in and dropped $200,000 in Bradley's pocket. Now for some more numbers, here are today's scores. That's sports. There's more news right after this.
French monastic community, Taizé, is holding its first ever pilgrimage in the United States. The goal of the conference is to build trust among Christians. The event is being held in Ohio and has attracted more than 2,000 young people for talk and prayer. The gatherers come from 46 different states and 20 different countries. They are learning about their cultural and ethnic differences to better understand one another.
Well, what we're seeing these days is that it's possible to share, not to see the differences as things that are obstacles, but things that enrich you.
The gathering is meant for Christians ages 18 to 30, but adults of any age and denomination could attend. Archaeologists in Arizona are searching for an Indian tribe that disappeared more than 500 years ago. Chuck Thorne has the story.
Archaeological digs are almost commonplace in Arizona. The dry climate preserves ancient artifacts. This dig near Lake Roosevelt is the largest in the country. Archaeologists are searching for traces of an Indian tribe known as Salado. Some 10,000 are believed to have lived in this area east of Phoenix up to 800 years ago. They farmed a 44-mile stretch of land between two rivers. Archaeologists say it will be another year before excavation of the Salado site is complete, and then up to 4 years before all the evidence is fully interpreted. Scientists hope to be able to find out what happened to this lost culture. Signs of the Salado people disappeared around 1450.
It seems that the people moved on very suddenly and took with them just the minimum requirements for their existence. So whether it's flood or whether it was some sort of political upheaval or perhaps military conflict, at both the Schoolhouse Mound and the Klein Terrace Mound, we have evidence for a rather rapid departure.
Some speculate the Salados became too large in number and drought wiped them out. Scientists hope something can be learned from the Salados.
Maybe we made false assumptions about the resources, the water. And these people erred and paid the price, and would hate to think that we're going to err and pay the price too.
I'm Chuck Thorne reporting.
And that's the news for this half hour. I'm Lisa Engstrom. Thanks for joining us.